105. Covenant versus Contract. Chalcedon Position Paper number 164, June 1993. It is well known that the modern social contract theories of civil government are derived from biblical, covenantal thinking. There is, however, a great difference between them. Both have to do with law, but in contracts, man determines the law. In the biblical record, covenants are laws given by God to man as an act of grace. God's covenant is thus entirely a God-given law, whereas contracts are entirely man-made. The thesis of contracts was boldly set forth in 1812 by Benjamin Watkins Lee in Substitute, proposed by Mr. Lee of Dinwiddie to the preamble and resolutions on the subject of the right of the state legislatures to instruct their senators in the Congress of the U.S. In this pamphlet on government by consent and the doctrine of virtual representation, Lee wrote, "It is maxim of all governments founded on contract that no man can be bounded by laws to which he had not given his assent, either directly or mediately by his representative, or virtually through representatives chosen by his fellow citizens among whom he dwells, having the same local and general interests with himself." This is a plain statement of faith which is still working out its implications in the United States and elsewhere. All over the world, the social contract theory is increasingly basic to governmental theory. However it be done, everywhere to some degree. It is a maxim of all governments that no man can be bound by laws to which he has not given his assent. This is basic to constitutionalism, and it is also basic to anti-constitutionalism and its belief that no document from the past can be valid for the present. In the 1930s, it was held that the United States Constitution was a social contract for a horse and buggy era, not for the 20th century. If no man is bound by laws to which he has not given his assent, then no law is binding on any man, nor any tax, if the man has not consented to it. This gives us a society like that of the Book of Judges, when men, having rejected God as king and lawgiver, did as each one pleased. Every man did that which is right in his own eyes. Judges chapter 21, verse 25. This is increasingly what we see in the world around us. All the so-called minority groups feel free to despise every law they disagree with. The same applies to some Christians. If they see a law as wrong, they refuse to obey it because they have not given their consent to it. Lawlessness and rioting are thus on the increase. All contractual theories of civil government rest on this same doctrine of assent. It has led to universal suffrage, but if everyone has the vote, not everyone votes for the existing laws. Marxist countries have provided a single slate with only one option to gain nearly unanimous voting. But even then, dissenting votes appear. The demand for universal assent leads not only to universal suffrage, but also to total controls to gain a total assent. Benjamin Watkins Lee was a Southern gentleman. He had no idea of the implications that the reigning doctrine of the social contract would lead to. The example of the French Revolution did not register with him, nor did he foresee the implications of his theory for the South. In time, Southern blacks would demand that laws exist only with their assent. The social contract theory came from Enlightenment thinkers who saw it as a noble concept, They believed the future of mankind required it for peace and harmony. The doctrine of covenantal law states simply that God, being the creator, lawgiver, and redeemer, is the only valid source of law. God gives his law as an act of grace to man, so that his covenant is both law and grace. It is not within man's jurisdiction to debate, for example, as to whether or not murder and theft should be allowed or banned. God decrees the law, and man's duty is to obey and enforce it. Man has no right to make law. God gives man the law, and man's duty is to obey it. In a humanistic society, law is whatever men may decree. As in the Soviet Union, men may then make your assent mandatory. Your assent is coerced. Almost from the beginning, and before the United States Constitution was ratified, there were demands for a more democratic order. A social contract theory of civil governments having been adopted, the people increasingly demanded that it become democratic. It was felt that the suffrage had to be extended so that all laws receive more and more of the people's assent. As the area of consent was enlarged, so too were the areas of control. As the United States became more democratic, it became less and less free because assent had replaced freedom and justice. Is an American free now that he pays 49% of his income as local, state, or federal taxes? Has the freedom to vote made us more free when we vote for more statism via both major parties? Of what value is our assent or dissent when the progressive tyranny of universal assent rules us? I recall very, very vividly the election of Franklin Delano Roosevelt to the presidency as against Herbert Hoover. Hoover was himself a liberal, out-liberaled by Roosevelt. In some areas, certainly our own, anyone against Roosevelt was called an enemy of the people. He who disliked Roosevelt was a non-person, a capitalistic fool, and so on and on. This was in 1931, in a still free America. Why? The social contract theory requires a universal assent to the general will, as Rousseau saw it. In The Social Contract, Chapter 8, Rousseau wrote, "Whosoever shall refuse to obey the general will must be constrained by the whole body of his fellow citizens to do so, which is no more than to say that it may be necessary to compel a man to be free." This is the world of George Orwell's 1984. There is no escape from the logical conclusion of humanism's social contract theory of law other than by a return to biblical covenantalism, to God's law and God's salvation. Civil government under humanistic presuppositions is increasingly becoming a hellish nightmare. Is it not time to speak a word about bringing back the King, Jesus Christ? 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 10.